All right, so we're going to talk about blogging. Molly gets the pop part. I have the tips. If you see here, you can see. We have some disclosures. You'll see those in a moment. We both have jobs, and those are listed, and we both are AADE bloggers. Off-label use, the FDA is not monitoring blogs, so we will not be having any, right, not yet. So, within the next hour, you will be able to describe various forms of social media, go through different terms related to blogging, and describe the benefits for your roles here as a blogger, or to get somebody else to blog. That will be a theme. We're going to go through an exercise to help get you started on creating an effective blog that's related to diabetes education that pops, and then we'll have some time to share ideas and challenges. So first, we'll step back and take a look at the big picture. Before we know what a blogging is, let's see where it fits into social media. So basically, social media is just web or mobile-based technologies for interactive dialogue, communications, and social software. So does anybody in here have a smartphone? Yeah. I have to tell you, at the last board meeting, that was asked. Who didn't have a smartphone was the question. Is Joan Bardsley in here? She raised her hand, and we all kind of looked and said, "You don't have a smartphone?" And she said, "Well, no, I have a," and I don't want to say the brand, but she has a smartphone. It's maybe just not like the well-known smartphone. Everybody's got smartphones now. We all are on these all the time. We are so much more comfortable with social media than a few years ago. I mean, think back 5 years, the same presentation would be very different. So social media has a lot of different styles. There's internet forums, so for AADE, that would include my AADE network. People are on listservs for diabetes education and for all your other professions and interests. There are web blogs, and we're going to talk quite a bit about that. There are social blogs, like what you see on Facebook. Microblogging, so that's teeny blogs. So the big example there is Twitter, where you get 140 characters to put your little bit on. Wikis, that's a web-based interactive page where people can add or delete. So think about Wikipedia, where there's something on the page, but people have the ability to adjust as needed. Social networks. LinkedIn is a big social network. I bet a lot of people here on LinkedIn. It's kind of cool because if you put yourself on and you're a diabetes educator and you link with somebody, then you'll get the "you might also know," and you can really get connected for your profession. Podcasts, we all know what those are, audio or video casts. Photographs can be in social media as well as videos. So if you put down your diabetes educator journal for a little bit, you can wander over to the Business Horizons journal, or you could do what I did and Google it, and come up with this kind of different categorization of social media. So starting with, they categorize as collaborative projects such as Wikipedia, where again you can add and take away, and different people, you can do those sorts of collaborations. Blogs and microblogs, which again we'll talk about quite a bit. Content communities, so these types of social media that are based on what they are. So YouTube is a great example where it's all videos. Pinterest, where it's collections of photography. Flickr is a new one, which is actually just individual photos. Social networking, this is huge. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. MySpace, maybe I could delete that. So I'm a Facebook newbie. I just got on maybe like 6 weeks ago, and I got a little prompt one day on my phone, and my friend said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, it's somebody on Facebook, posted something." And she said, "You have an alert for that?" And I said, "Yeah, but I only have 4 friends at the time." She said, "You're going to have to learn how to adjust that." But I think I'm up to like 8 friends, so we have you guys be my friends. And then there's things that I know nothing about, but to complete the list, virtual games and virtual social worlds. Maybe Richard knows about those. He seems to be our techie. So who doesn't know these icons? Social media has just become so widespread. We're all connected into this. So it really is a great way for us to communicate with the members of our groups. So what is a blog? So I got a call maybe 3 years ago from somebody at AADE. I want to say it was, I don't think it was Joyce Lee at the time. She's our person there now. And somebody said, hey, we're going to have a blog. Do you want to be a blogger? And I said, sure. Because I think like most people here, I say yes pretty quickly to things. And I thought, I wonder what that is. So my first blog was, what is a blog? Because I had no idea. I literally had to research, what the heck does that even mean? So it comes from logging things on the web or on the internet. I was at a basketball game last week watching my nephews, and my little niece pulled out a little diary with a little lock that she said nobody can get in it because it's locked. She'll learn differently from that. Well, we don't do that anymore as adults. That's not how we log things. We do it on the internet through Facebook and these different things. So weblog was said, as an upstate New Yorker says it, quickly. So weblog became weblog. So say that 3 times real fast. Weblog, weblog, weblog. Became we blog, which eventually just became blog. That's a blog. That's what it came from. It's a form of social media. It's just a discussion or informational site that's on the web. You can also use it as a verb, as I do. I blog. I say that to people at work, and they're like, you do what? I don't think they think I'm cool enough. But welcome to the blogosphere. So basically, a blog is just a commentary on a subject. It can be a personal online diary, and I'm sure you see lots of those out there. It can include feelings, reflections, recommendations. It's, as my friend used to say growing up, we used to say, hey, TSTL, the sky's the limit. You will find anything out there on the blog. And the nice thing from our perspective is you can kind of put anything. It doesn't have to be a research project. You can be very comfortable about putting your thoughts, your ideas, some new knowledge that you have or some knowledge that you're seeking. There are corporate or organizational-based blogs, such as the blog we have on my AAD network, and there's many, many personal blogs. And at the end, you'll see a listing of several that are diabetes-related. Most blogs are interactive, so they allow instant comments and messages, and this isn't the case with all social media. Certainly, several types of social media have that. And that's something I'll talk a little bit later about in blogging netiquette, that you want to be ready for those messages and you want to respond to them. The posts are typically displayed in reverse chronological order, so the first thing you're going to see is what was posted last. Sometimes there's quite a thread down there that you need to read through. Blogs can include lots of different things, and actually it's kind of fun I almost always throw a little image on mine. I just think it breaks up the words, but certainly text. Images are sometimes the whole blog or sometimes part of it. I have a niece that's she's a photography major, but there's a bigger name for it. And as their first year project, hence the tuition, her first year project, they had to make a blog. And so hers is just photographs in groupings. It's really kind of neat. You can put links to other blogs, which is kind of nice. It's probably good to get the okay from the other blog person if you're linking. There can be other topic-related media, so there's really a lot of opportunity. There are just art blogs, photo blogs, video blogs. Did you know those are called vlogs? Music blogs, audio, and microblogs. So what's a blogger? Somebody who writes a blog. I hit send on that first blog, and I was a blogger. And what is blogging? It's just to write a post for a blog. So as a leader in AADE, why would we think about writing blogs? It's one big way that we can get different volunteers involved. And this has been a recurrent theme today. How can we get people involved? It's a big deal to ask somebody to help plan the annual meeting, right? We just talked about that. It's not such a big thing to ask somebody to write a post that's 150 words. So it's a great way to start bringing people in, have a new volunteer dip their toe into the water. In general, outside of getting somebody involved, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, it's one way to increase satisfaction with AADE and with your part of AADE. In membership surveys, we can see that one thing that's really important for a member to get out of AADE is knowledge and information and feeling part of a group. And this is a great way to do it. So to get a post on there and to get some interaction is a really nice way for somebody to say, oh, that was interesting. And then when they go to renew their membership and they realize that they got some good information or good interaction through this, it's one more reason for us to retain our members and recruit new members. We've been really lucky in AAD. Well, no, I'm not going to give it to luck. AADE has done a great job, and we have seen a wonderful growth over the last few years that we're over 14,000 strong. And a lot of the internet collaboration is what has created that. So using my AAD network, and one part of it is through blogging. So we've heard this already this morning. How do we get more members involved? Ask them individually and personally. If you post something that says, we need somebody to write a blog, do not hold your breath, because you got one response? That is one more than I would have expected. It's really got to be the individual email, the individual phone call, or tapping somebody at something, getting their business card, and getting that connection to get them involved. But I think that the really important thing about a blog is letting somebody know it's not a big deal. It's fairly low as far as time commitment. It just doesn't take a lot of time or energy. So I think Peggy Hoffman a couple years ago in a session at AADE talked about micro-volunteering. This is a great way to do it. Not to have somebody be, a co-facilitator of your organization, but somebody that once every 2 months they write a small blog. So it's a little less threatening. Then once you get them there and you see what they're doing, then you bring them in for more. So as for bloggers, it's really important for bloggers to know that, within reason, they can write on whatever they want. It doesn't have to be, I think about how we read research papers. It's so much easier to write a blog. It's your thoughts. The words get to come out. You just sit at the keyboard or use Dragon dictation, and it comes out. It's important for us to let a young blogger, young not being an age thing, a newbie, understand that it's not a big deal. This is what it involves. Here are a few examples. You're really knowledgeable in such and such. Can you just write a couple hundred words on that? Time commitment, about 1 hour to 2 hours per blog. That's my time commitment. I am not a natural writer. So my real time commitment is like the 10 minutes it takes me to think of a topic. And then Kiki this morning was talking about how you can drive in the car, and instead of listening to the radio, you can think of things. I run every day. A lot of people know that about me. That's when the blog gets up here. So I form my outline. So part of that 1 hour to 2 hours, I'm kind of multitasking. And then I sit down and I type it. Typically, then I leave it there. I come back to it, usually the next morning. I'm a little bit more awake, or a couple hours later, and just read it through again. Be surprised the things I catch. For you as a leader, determine deadlines. Marcy in the COI talk this morning, I believe it was, had a nice outline that was laid out for the public health COI with a calendar, and it had who was going to do what when. If you're going to ask somebody to write a blog, like so many other things, you need a deadline. If I didn't have a deadline, Joyce, when would my blog be in? I mean, deadline to me, if it says it's due December 1st, it's in by December 1st at midnight. And I think a lot of people are like that. It's easy to put it on the back burner. So give a deadline, send a little reminder email, and provide mentoring and partnering. But again, I think the education that's kind of a low-level situation may be helpful for that. So it's a way that you as a leader can get the word out that volunteering is fun with a pretty low maintenance type activity. A couple things that you can do is either you or the volunteer themselves can profile themselves. What do they do? What's unique about their job? What's something interesting about them? It might be somebody that's been in your group for a long time or somebody that's fairly new that you can just highlight, and there's a blog right away.
Karen, I think we have a question.
Oh, great.
For you.
When you're posting the blog, when you're getting the volunteers, who can post the blog? Can the volunteer? The person in your membership
Yeah,
posts?
so the leader of the CB, I believe, can post it.
Okay.
And the administrator.
And
the
then,
administrator.
And the administrators,
Okay, I just
yes.
wanted to
So there's certain
clarify
people with
that.
rights. So it's not necessarily going to be that volunteer. They're going to pop it through the email to you.
To
and,
you,
and
okay.
you will be able to post it. And that's definitely something that I have learned that John and the group there is really helpful. Initially, when you as a leader maybe are not comfortable with how to do that, they'll be happy to walk you through.
you mean John Tyler?
Yeah.
So,
John's name has been dropped so many times today.
so there's only 2 people in the CB that can actually post the blog? Or just,
The administrator and the CB, and then the LNGs, I believe some of them also.
Yeah, so there are multiple people that have that ability. I think the CB leader and the administrator would always have that ability. And then if you in your situation would like other people involved, I think John can open the door for that. Yes.
How do people respond then if only certain people can post?
So the question is, how do people respond once they can post? Once it's out there
Anyone.
and that person hits reply, you'll see it goes to the group. Kind of important to know, it goes to the group. So if you guys are going, oh, hey, Susie, so great to hear from you. How are the kids? What's your dog doing? Appreciate it's going to the whole group. And it'll say that, it'll prompt that. You'll see when you hit reply, it's not to Marcy, it's to everybody. Great, thank you. So a teeny bit about blogging netiquette before Molly takes us through the exercise. What to include. In this situation, it could be something that's specific to your coordinating body, your LNG, or your COI. Doesn't have to be, but those are some ideas. AAD has an interesting makeup with the regional situation and the communities of interest. So somebody in a CB may be, I'm going to use Richard as an example. Richard's in California, but he does physical activity. So he could write a blog about physical activity on the California CB blog post. So it can be something that's about your CBLNG or something that's just of other interest. News about diabetes. If something's hot on the wire, it's a great way to spread the word. We are so bombarded with different types of information that sometimes we miss something that's really important. So there's a new product or medication or a new method of teaching or something, go ahead and throw it out there. It can typically be something in your comfort zone if you're writing the blog or something in your knowledge base. It doesn't have to be. Joyce asked me maybe a year ago to write about an advocacy issue. Sorry, Martha, but that's not my comfort zone. But I went in, I delved into the topic, and I learned about it. So it was actually a great thing for me to have to do. It can be certainly information about diabetes and education and educators, but remember we're all people too. It can be, something that really has nothing to do with diabetes education, but that you think is something that the readers would appreciate. Can be about advocacy, and I'm sure you all have lots of other ideas, and some of those will be coming out in a few minutes. Blogging netiquette, give credit where credit's due. If we were writing in a research article or anything else and we were taking information from somebody, we would cite that. So you don't have to use references or anything, but it is really important to say, this journal said that, or this author said such and such, to give credit where it's due. Respond to comments. If you do post something, if you can write yourself a little note every couple days for a bit, peek back on, because it is nice to respond to a comment. And Marcy made a nice point this morning in the COI talk. If somebody in the group posts something and nobody responds, that person's maybe not so likely to post. So you as a leader, maybe if you can keep your eye on that, I know one more thing, and respond to comments. What to avoid? Who might read your blog? Could be anybody. Granted it's within our organization, but do appreciate that somebody out there could be offended, and you want to be aware of that. I heard a few years back, assume that if you post something on the internet, a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, and your employer, anybody could read this stuff. So be really careful about what you say. It's not something to do after you've had a few glasses of wine and you're really tired. Be careful about it. What will be the reader's impression? The biggest reason I read through mine after I've walked away from it for a while, I want to make sure my grammar's okay, that I don't have typos in there. I just try to take out a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, so I don't have 500 words to say what could be done in 300 words. So it's important to, you want to reflect yourself as you're writing your blog. What is proprietary? You can't go on the internet and take any little picture off of Google Images and throw it on and think that that's okay. If something is from .gov, it's all of ours. We've paid for that in our taxes. If it's not, don't assume you can use it. So just be aware of that. Be really careful about putting private information that is your private information or somebody else's. Again, anybody could be reading these things. So you may want to share, and you'll see a lot of the patient-oriented blogs do have personal information, but there are many challenges there. It's okay to share knowledge and opinions, but don't sell products or services. That's not what the blog within my AED network is about. It's helping us to become better people, better educators, have more knowledge about diabetes, but it's not a way to sell products or services. The last two I'm hoping we don't have to worry too much about, but it's out there. Beware of blog stalking or unwanted attention, and again, keeping in mind that personal information, and be prepared for malevolent comments. And I don't think we're going to have really scathing things, but you do have to be a little thick-skinned if you put something that might raise a little controversy. We probably won't go through, but I put a post out there, a blog, probably 8 months ago, that I questioned, is it okay to call a person a diabetic, or should it be a person with diabetes? I was pretty excited. I got 18 responses. Did they all agree with me one way or the other? No. There were a lot of different opinions on that. It was kind of nice because there was that interaction. But if I was going to be offended by when somebody was not going to agree with me, too bad. Because once it's out there, it's out there. So just kind of keep that in mind. We don't want to offend somebody, or be ready what might come back. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Molly, and she's going to run us through getting started.
All righty. So now you're ready to blog, right? You could do it right now? Absolutely. You ready? All right. So this is what I like to think about when you write a successful blog, is the Seinfeld Factor. Seinfeld, who has not seen Seinfeld? One person. All right, so most of you will understand what I'm saying then. So start with a small idea. Seinfeld was a show about nothing. It didn't have really complicated plots, but there was always one phrase in every episode, and you can say that phrase, and then you can pull the whole episode back. So, no soup for you, the soup Nazi, yada, 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 shrinkage, sponge-worthy. I mean, there were many. Man hands. That was a really good one, too. Yeah, so you can say that one word, and the whole episode, you've got it summed up, right? So I like to think of a good blog as passing the Seinfeld test. Is there one word from that blog that pulls the whole picture back for me? And, you can't do that every time, but hopefully most of the time. So here's an example of a blog that I wrote that got a lot of responses. I'm just going to read it to you. I know you can fully read. But it was entitled, Oh My Goodness. I wanted to call this OMG, but then I was like, I don't know. Some people might get offended, whatever. So I went with Oh My Goodness. So the post says, in our regular everyday life, we make all kinds of assumptions. For example, I assume that if you come to a red light, you're going to stop. We all know this is not a 100% safe assumption. Recently, while at my volunteer job, CDE at a free clinic, a physician handed me a chart and said, I can't get this patient to test their blood sugar. He's had diabetes for 10 years already. I can't do anything if people are unwilling to do something as simple as that. So I went into the room and I sat down with the patient. I took out a meter and explained how to test blood sugar. The patient said, well, I had been wondering how the blood was supposed to get into that machine. And sometimes it really can be that simple. Assuming that someone will understand how a glucometer works is not always a safe guess. For most of you, this is something you would do immediately for a new diagnosis. But what about somebody who's had 10 years of diabetes and then they suddenly enter your care? Do you assume that they know how to operate their glucometer? For this patient, I'm happy to report a decrease in A1C from 9.5% to 7% in a matter of 90 days. He's happily testing and learning to respond to what the numbers mean now that he knows how the blood gets into the meter. As for the physician, I explained to him that this person wasn't testing their blood sugar because nobody showed him how to. Oh my goodness, the physician said. Yes, oh my goodness, indeed. So long story short, if you find someone not doing what they're asked to or not completely compliant, ask yourself, do they have all the information they need to complete this task? You may catch yourself saying, oh my goodness. And I got a lot of great responses. I didn't bring them all with me because some of them were explicit. And what people don't understand how to do and take care of themselves or their diabetes and things like that. But they were fantastic, and it's just people making that assumption that someone knows how to do something, and it's just missing that simple step of how does the blood get in the meter. So getting started, I like to keep a notes section on my phone and on my desktop at work, and then when I'm just at a conference table at work, in a meeting, I keep a notepad in front of me and I jot down ideas. So if someone says something that sticks with me, and I think, gosh, man, I could really rant on that for a while. Someone said something this morning that was great, was raspberry ketones. And I thought, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I could totally write about that. That is so annoying to me. The same thing I could say about people taking cinnamon pills to manage their diabetes. So I thought, let's get some rants down. Could I have the whiteboard over here? I think John's going to grab it for me. I'm going to write down some ideas. So raspberry ketones, fantastic. Non-compliance, that's a big one. I personally don't think that there are people who are non-compliant. They don't know what they're not doing. The entitlement factor, I like that one. Okay, so we can have Mike pass around, or you could yell out an idea. We've got entitlement factor, TV doctors. I've never spent so much time cussing Dr. Oz in my life. Yeah, TV doctors, the raspberry, ketones.
Molly, do you need help? Would you like for us to write for you? Would it be-
Oh yeah, because my handwriting is just awful.
Okay.
Okay, great. Fantastic, thank you.
I need some shouting. Come on, shout.
What other ideas do you have? Is there something in your non-compliance was another one? Is there something else in your practice that you encounter? I have people.
He knows what he should be doing, so she doesn't want to come to the appointment because he knows what he should be doing.
He knows what he should be doing.
And maybe he doesn't.
Cynthia?
How about referring for an insulin pump with no carb counting skills?
No carb. Okay, referring someone for an insulin pump with no carb counting skills. That's also, yeah, that's a safety issue.
The no white diet.
I'm sorry?
The no white diet.
The no white diet. Yeah, the no white food diet. What else? Is there anything recently that's happened in the news or otherwise? Apple cider vinegar. Which, has health benefits. I'm not going to dismiss that. But I'm also not a dietitian. I've got one which I'm dying to blog on. Yes, go ahead.
You don't have to stick your finger with that meter.
You don't have to stick your finger with that meter.
I want the meter that didn't stick yourself.
Yes, I do too. I want that one too. As a type 1, I could use not sticking myself.
Sliding scale.
Sliding scale. In hospitals. These are great. Yes. What about something kind of off the wall or wacky? Have you ever had an encounter with a patient where something just really weird happened, but you had a good lesson that came out of it? I got a nod over here.
You want me to tell you?
Yes, please.
I had a gentleman ask me in class if that the glucose from the food could be absorbed through his skin.
If glucose through the food could be absorbed through his skin.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was worried that if he touched food, if his blood sugar would go up.
Well, that would be definitely
In 30
dangerous.
years, I've never heard that.
That might be where all my weight gain comes from. Yes. Yes.
He told me he was on 70/30 insulin.
Okay.
He thought that meant 70 in the morning and 30 in the
All right, patient on 70/30 insulin who thought meant 70 units in the morning and 30 in the evening. Okay. That's a very dangerous one. Yeah.
I had a patient who heard that they wanted them to test 2 inches around their abdomen for 9 years, type 1. That's all give his insulin 2 inches away from his belly button.
I bet that was pretty.
It
Yeah.
was so hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
His needles kept breaking.
Oh, poor thing. Oh, yes.
I get asked a lot in the diabetes education class, is this food good for diabetes?
Yes. Yes, because there's food that is specifically good for diabetes. Yes.
I had this one patient, and we couldn't understand why the insulin wasn't working. When I watched her try to give herself insulin, and that she was using a pen, she never took the inner cap off.
You know, I've actually seen that myself, and it scares me that can happen. But the teaching went wrong at some point. Yes.
Years ago, when we thought you should teach people how to give insulin with an orange, I didn't do this, but I had a patient on the diabetes unit I worked on who went home, gave the insulin to the orange, and ate it.
Woo! We have one back here, yes. No.
I do a lot of education for nurses, and I recently heard it from a few nursing homes. They actually take the syringe and take the insulin out of the pen. That's a common thing
I've
in
seen
nursing
that.
homes.
And then that renders the pen useless. Yeah.
I have a VA patient who has struggled. He's mixing his long-term and his fast-acting bolus units, and I've been trying to get him a pen to better distinguish these, and he was told by the VA that they wouldn't allow that because he still has use of both arms. So vision and cognition are of no value, I guess.
We just recently had a really good post on our advanced practice community of interest where someone posted about a patient who now with the Affordable Care Act has a really high deductible, like, $2,000 to $4,000, and they were posting, is it going to be possible for people now to come in for diabetes education because they have these high deductibles? So it might be kind of like, okay, what are people seeing shake out with the Affordable Care Act?
Right, that's great. That would be great.
I have a friend that works as a CDE in Colorado, and probably you all know that marijuana is legal there. And she had a patient come in who was mixing her medical marijuana with brownies and wanted to know if there was a better recipe so she didn't have to use sweets to consume her medicine.
Yes.
Other than in chocolate brownies.
Very
because their
good.
sugars went up.
Yeah, that's very good. I've heard spaghetti sauce works. Yeah.
I had a patient come to me with their little bottle of control solution from their meter, saying, now how much of this do I drink to control my blood sugar?
Nice.
That's the OMG.
Oh.
I've heard that a few times recently.
How about
Say something when we give people control about that, because I heard it a few times recently.
How about educational tools, best educational tools that we have found, especially in other languages?
That's good, yeah, absolutely. Good resource, share resources.
So treating hypoglycemia with cheese or other non-carb foods. I've been a dietitian for 20 years and a CDE for 15, and my mother was treating my dad's low blood sugars with cheese. I'm like, it's not a carb. How does this happen?
Yeah, somebody offered me peanuts the other day for a low, and I was like, really? Okay. And then we'll take one more after this.
This was told by a friend of mine, and it freaked me out when I heard it. So a patient was on oral agents, came into the hospital with a really high blood sugar and a double-digit A1C, goes home on insulin for the first time, and gets readmitted not too long afterwards with a very high blood sugar. So the educator goes back to see what went wrong, and this is what went wrong. He said that because he had gone from orals to insulin, and he felt that was sort of an intermediary step, he was taking his insulin pen and squirting it in his mouth. Swear.
Ooh.
Yeah, didn't work.
Yuck. Yeah, when we're back here. And then after this share, we're going to share again in a minute, so yeah.
There was a patient that was started on insulin, and they came back into the to the pharmacy with an empty vial of insulin and wanted to know if they were cured.
Oh, don't we wish, right?
So the peril is do not assume, which we were talking about earlier. Do not assume.
Right, do not assume. Assume nothing. So I would read all of these stories, wouldn't you? They're interesting. They prove a point. You're talking about educating a patient or getting resources, for better languages. Maybe you've got a good story behind that. So if something happens in your day, and it doesn't have to be your story, it can be something that happened to someone else that you think is a great example. De-identify everybody, particularly your patients. But using that story to illustrate it, and if you can even find a word in there that kind of zings with it, you'll pass the Seinfeld test and make an interesting blog. Because you're trying to write something in 150, maybe 200, I'm wordy, characters. It's difficult to do. So you're going to take your story, and if it takes you 3 pages to tell it, it might not be your story. So start with your 3 pages and then cut it down. Is a one paragraph that sums up that story? Just one thing, like this person injecting the orange and then taking the orange home and eating it. Which, God, that must have tasted awful. So, you got that going on. And then what did you do to remedy it? And, what can we do going forward about making these assumptions? I have one that I've been dying to blog about, and I keep forgetting this. But I had a patient and his wife. They came from a rural county, maybe 50 miles away from our little free clinic. And we were talking about menu planning, and I said, so what's your favorite vegetable? And he said, chicken. And I was like, and his wife was like, yes, he loves chicken. So, we had to go to the root of what a vegetable was and go from there. So, you never know what's going to come out and make a great story. So, assuming that, chicken is a vegetable, that would be a great vegetable. It's just not a vegetable. So, dispelling the myths, and particularly with the things that happen in the media, and I hate to razz on Dr. Oz because he's done good things for many people, but every time he goes on TV, I spend hours on doing this. So, if I can write a post, or you can write a post that remedies that situation quickly, then I can use that material and hopefully save some time with my patients the next time they try to take so much cinnamon and it gives them heartburn for a week. you know, or they think that they can no longer eat a banana. I don't know who did the banana thing recently, but that has been all over my patients. I can't eat bananas anymore because of diabetes. So, you know, you have something that came out and you were able to explain it, great. Post it, because the rest of us are going to run into that situation again. And hopefully, eventually, you know, the myths about diabetes can die down, and we can spend our time solely on, you know, starting education without myths. So from all of these ideas, I think that we have plenty of material to do this. You definitely do. So you're going to tell your story. You're going to tell it concisely. So write it all out, edit it down, try to get it to 1 page, less, and then wrap it up in a bow. So when you wrap it up in a bow, what I mean by that is the last line or last couple lines of your post should be reflective of your title of your post, so that you got the title, you got the end, and the person can kind of just put all that information together very quickly, so that when you say, you know, insulin orange or something like that, someone knows exactly the story you're talking about. Or, you know, the yada, 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 or whatever from Seinfeld. You know the episode. So you pick that catchy title, and that takes me the longest. And sometimes I get the title before I get the post. So if you even have something that pops in your head like, I hate raspberry ketones, that might be the title of your post. And then you write about the raspberry ketones. And you sum it up with, that is why I hate raspberry ketones. So I will remember that post by the name and by the end of how you summed it up. And I really think if you can, you know, just, you know, people think they can't write, but you know, you all have great stories. And you just showed today, I mean, I think we've got 2 pages worth of ideas, and each of those things could be more than 1 post. You can do it. So keep a notepad handy, or your phone, or whatever works for you. When something happens and you're like, that's a real gem of a moment, or that's a real teaching moment right there, just jot it down so you can jog your memory later, and then you can write the post. So you all know how to do it. If anyone wants to guest blog, please reach out. We'd love to have you do it. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions about how to develop content before I hand it back to Karen? No? Yes?
As you were talking about blogging about, like, you were saying, like, if you had a patient that did the orange episode or the squirting the insulin in their mouth, but I'm an RN and I'm thinking about HIPAA. Mm-hmm. So,
don't say anything.
Because I've heard stories that RNs have taken a picture of an amputation in surgery and got sued.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. So, all right, so I do research. I work with the IRB all the time. The identifiers are dates of birth, addresses, names, so security numbers, place of work, medical record number, not a generic description of an event. And oftentimes I change the gender when I talk about one of my stories. So just to, right. You don't have to list your place of employment. I actually had permission from the patient that I saw to post that blog, because he was so thrilled with getting his A1C down in 90 days. So you can also get permission from the patient, de-identify them, but you can also get permission. But yeah, just don't post full names, things like that. Just try to take their identity out of the picture. Get someone else to read it and say, could you identify this person?
Great. Good, thank you. Those were amazing ideas. Yay. Great. I think with a lot of these things too, there's, I must have really shook the stage. these things happen. Oh, it's just tapping the computer. Okay. So you don't have to be real specific about the situations to just say, I've seen somebody who did whatever. Our blogs, we try to get them in 350 to 500 words. Out of the bloggers, a couple of us, I'm really long-winded. It takes, I keep going, word check, word check, word check, 499, yes, submit. And other people hit 350. You know, just think about what you would want to read. I think the catchy title is really, really important. If you see something come through your email, is an alert for something, what makes you go further? You have 4, 5, 6 words with that catchy title. As a COI leader, you can send an announcement out and say, great new blog posted on, and that can be what you're doing to facilitate that. When we first started the blog for AADE, we were really trying to get a lot of interaction on it. I would try to really finish things with a question oftentimes, and I was so sad because nobody wrote back to me. And I thought, nobody reads the blog. And then I go to annual meeting, and so many people come up and say, oh, you're Karen Kemmis, you write the blog. I like this one on such and such. People from industry have said that. I mean, again, people are reading these. You know, lots of different members of AADE. So don't worry if it doesn't get response. You might want to be the one in your CB, LNG, or COI that does respond, or you might want somebody to plant it, but don't worry if it doesn't. So just I'm not going to read through these last few slides. What you're going to see is we've got listed as far as social media, specifically for the diabetes community, there's the diabetes education blog, and then a lot of diabetes support blogs. So for our education blog, the main one for AADE is our main blog, that there's 5 of us that rotate blogging and some guest bloggers. And that's within, it's on the main title, the main page of the web page now. And so here's one recently that it's pretty easy to get an idea, like every 5 weeks. So here's one that I wrote recently. And then here's an example in patient management. I happen to pull this one. You can see down, oops, oh, don't be touching stuff. You don't know what's going to happen. John, I think I'm good, I'm good. Do not touch the top thing. I thought it was a pointer. So inpatient management, not to single out, several of the groups have really good blogs, but I happen to pull this one up, several different blogs there, and again, to send an announcement to the group to bring them into that area. Then there are many, many, many as far as support blogs in the diabetes community. So there's an acronym, you know, we're so big on acronyms. Diabetes Online Community is the DOC. So if you hear the DOC, that's what it means. And so, like Diabetes Advocates is a general, it's a collaboration of individuals and organizations that collaborate to have diabetes online communities. And then you'll see several of these listed are a personal blog, a parent of somebody with diabetes, a person with diabetes, and some of them are organizational, like AADE, ADA, several JDRF. So I popped this up. I did a blog on this. It was not this past year, the year before. The Big Blue Test. This is from Diabetes Hand Foundation, and I got asked to promote the Big Blue Test. Does anybody know what it is? If you're at my blog, you do. So it ends on November 14th, World Diabetes Day. And basically the Diabetes Hand Foundation has support that anybody who goes on and does the Big Blue Test, which is if you don't have diabetes, you say if you exercised, for how long, what you did, and how long before that you had eaten. And if you have diabetes, you do a blood glucose test before and after. And they get financial support for monies that will in turn go to grants to help people helping diabetes. So it was a nice blog. So interesting, I posted the blog. On the side of this page it says how many people have done that. And I watched it. So we're over 14,000 strong. I did the blog and I kind of was like watching eBay. I was like, ooh, it's changing, it's changing. And I'd like to hope that people who read that blog tapped into this that may not have known about it otherwise. Several more, lots of different themes, and again, different organizations. And I've put here, this is from a list that Hope Warshaw, who's a diabetes educator and just finished her term on the board of directors, hopewarshaw.com/connect diabetes, so you can pop on there for nice descriptions of these. Here's the ADA's more patient-oriented website, and several others, including some of the diabetes magazines that we get commonly. So the next step, you guys can all walk out of here and write blogs. There were so many ideas. And again, whether you're here for a CB, an LNG, or a COI, we're all diabetes educators, and we all want to know all those great ideas. And again, it can be personal, it can be professionally based, so head out and write a blog. Or as a leader, probably better yet, if you can get other members to write blogs, get the schedule going, maybe facilitate that. If you're so inspired to write your own blog, there's a couple of sources to do that. I love when people go, what do you do for a living? I'm a blogger. How's that work out? I do have to have my other day job. Here's a page from the Public Health CI, so you can see several blogs there. And I do notice for the COIs that I see putting them out, there typically will be that announcement that brings somebody in. And that's what we have. So it sounds like you have great ideas, and thanks, Molly, for walking us through those steps so that everybody can feel more confident with that. And I think Molly and I have a few minutes for questions if you have any. Yes?
Maybe we have to get references to say that they use their
item or whatever.
Yeah.
How long of a process is that, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, to get references. I mean, if it was from an article that I saw something, I'll write out. It's not like I have to go after JAMA to get the reference approval, but I would put in the Journal of the American Medical Association, in this issue, there was an article about blah, blah, blah. That's all, then you've given them credit. If you're going to link to somebody else's something, you might want to touch base with them to get approval. But just like if you've written a research article, if you're just going to say something that somebody else said, I just don't want to say, like, I did research that said whatever. Just give credit where it's due. Just state it along in the context.
But when you have to get permission to use something, is that a long process to do that, or you just contact the person? And that's something that I've never had to do.
You're talking about copyright?
Yes.
Okay, so for copyright would mean that you are reproducing what someone else already did. So if you're giving out handouts, or you're posting a chapter from a book, things like that, but if you're posting an idea or like a quote, that's not a copyright issue.
Right. Think about if you want to take a couple sentences from something specifically, you could always put it in quotes and say who said it, where it came from, sort of thing. You just don't want to plagiarize or pretend that you made it yourself, but you don't have to go through a process, like if you are writing a journal article, as long as you give credit where credit's due. Good, thank you. Well, I think that Jane is going to tell us about a break. Thank you.